Hello, students. My name is Miss Petrozello, and I run the Connecticut's Kid Governor program here at the Connecticut Democracy Center. I'm coming to you today from the historic Connecticut's Old State House, the building you see behind me, which is the home of the Kid Governor program. If you're not familiar with Kid Governor, it is a statewide civics program for fifth graders. Students learn all about state government, voting and elections, and how to make a difference in their communities by participating in a real election for a kid governor. Some of you may have voted in the statewide election this past fall. Here at the Connecticut Democracy Center, we believe that each of us, no matter how old we are, can make a difference. And Kid Governor empowers our state's fifth graders to change the world. Kid Governor is a free program, and I hope that teachers or parents who are watching today will talk to their local schools and encourage them to participate in the next Kid Governor election in the fall. The next Kid Governor could be from your town. You can learn more about Kid Governor, both the student and the program, at ct.kidgovernor.org. Adults, you can also learn about us by following Connecticut's Kid Governor on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Today, you get to meet your 2023 Kid Governor, Ellie Mendez, who was elected last November by thousands of Connecticut fifth graders. She is a few months into her one-year term, and today's Express and Address Your Feelings education program is part of her 3-point Kid Governor platform. Ellie is passionate about mental health, and she is excited that so many students, classes, and community members are watching today's program to learn more about anxiety and depression and strategies to cope with those feelings. Ellie is a fifth grader at Monroe Elementary School in Monroe. She describes herself as being honest, patient, caring, and driven for change. She's also a champion at gymnastics because she's won 12 medals. She is a jokester and loves to play with her puppy Dino. So please join me in welcoming your 2023 Kid Governor, Ellie Mendez, for her Express and Address Your Feelings educational program.
Hello everyone, my name is Ellie Mendez, and I am your 2023 Connecticut's Kid Governor. I am coming to you from my Connecticut's Old State House in Hartford. I'm excited to welcome you to my live educational program. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little about my Kid Governor platform, Express and Address Your Feelings. It is about supporting kids experiencing anxiety and depression and improving mental health in our state. I chose this platform because through my own experiences, I've learned that there are not enough resources to help kids with their mental health. I also chose this platform because some parents believe that the symptoms of anxiety and depression may just be like a behavioral phase, or they'll get over it one day. But really, kids' mental health is very important. I want to help kids have a voice. There are 3 points to my Express and Address Your Feelings platform. The first is to educate the students about the signs of anxiety and depression and knowing how to cope with those signs. This is what brings us here today at the live educational program. The second point of my platform is to promote strategies for Connecticut fifth graders to communicate their feelings. The third point in my platform is to create a digital mental health hub with uplifting messages and interactive resource to inspire kids. Speaking of which, I have a special announcement about this point on my platform to make at the end of this program, so stay tuned. This year, I'm working with the Connecticut Democracy Center and the members of my cabinet to fulfill these 3 points. I hope you follow our term in office, read our blog, and make a difference in your own community. Now let's start with our educational program. More than 500 students from across Connecticut are watching today, which is amazing. I have 3 mental health experts joining me today, which is amazing. They are going to talk about the signs of anxiety and depression and strategies to cope with those feelings. I hope you enjoy the program. My first guest is Stephanie Bozak, who is a psychologist from the Department of Children and Families, or DCF. She studied clinical psychology at the University of Hartford and has experience with individual, family, and group therapy for people of all ages. Dr. Bozak especially loves working with children, adolescents, and their families. In her free time, she enjoys being active, baking cupcakes, cooking, and spending time with her family and her 2 rescue dogs, Chloe and Duffy. Let's welcome Dr. Bozak with a round of applause. My second guest is Dr. Lauren K. Ayr-Volta, who is a psychologist at the Connecticut Children Medical Center, as well as an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. Dr. Ayr-Volta attended Ohio State University for her doctorate in psychology. In her role at Connecticut Children's, Dr. Ayr-Volta provides therapy to children, adolescents, and young adults with cancer or blood disorders. She makes sure her patients have appropriate support and interventions in place to help them reach their potential. Let's give a round of applause to welcome Dr. Ayr-Volta. My third guest is Dr. Noel Casiano, who is a professor of psychology and human services at the University of Hartford, as well as the CEO of Casiano Clinic Services, LLC. He is the author of 3 books and has been featured TEDx speaker. Dr. Casiano has received honors from the Connecticut General Assembly, the Connecticut Institute for Community Development, and U.S. Senators Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal. He was born and raised in Hartford and is committed to improving the social emotion of health individuals and families. Let's welcome Dr. Casiano with a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you all for being here today to teach Connecticut students about the signs of anxiety and depression and strategies to cope with those feelings. I have a list of questions to ask you, so let's begin. At the center of my Kid Governor platform, the topic of mental health, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, says that mental health is our emotion, physical, and social well-being. My question for each of you is, why is mental health important for us to talk about? Dr. Bozak, what are your thoughts?
Great question, Ellie. I think mental health, just like our physical health, is part of our overall wellness. And so it's important to talk about to make sure that we're keeping ourselves as healthy as possible.
Dr. Ayr-Volta?
I would like to add to what Dr. Bozak said, which is that we know there's that connection between how we feel and our overall physical health. And so when we keep our mental health in a good place, we're also keeping our physical health in a good place.
Dr. Casiano?
I also think that emotions that we feel, they're all normal. And for us to be able to recognize how we feel and to share with others is so important. What's not healthy is to be able to ignore those emotions and not share with others how we're feeling.
That was all great answers. Thank you. Now that we know more about mental health, let's talk about some emotions that are part of mental health. We can start with anxiety. The dictionary says that anxiety is a feeling or nervousness or unease. Can each of you tell us what anxiety feels like? For example, what are physical cues from your body that might mean that you're feeling anxious? Dr. Ayr-Volta?
So there's lots of physical symptoms actually connected to anxiety. And I would imagine that most of the students watching have felt nervous or anxious at some point, and they might feel their muscles tense up. They might feel like their heart is racing. They might feel those butterflies in their belly or feel a stomach ache or a little nauseous. Just those are lots of those normal physical sensations that we have when we're feeling anxious.
Dr. Casiano, what do you think?
Yeah, anxiety can feel different for many different people. I like to look at it this way. There's positive anxiety, right? Positive anxiety motivates us. And it says, if your stomach is grumbling, right? Positive anxiety says, you have to go eat something. Or if you know you have a test on Friday in school and it's Wednesday and you haven't studied, positive anxiety says we have to take out time and make sure that we study and we read all our materials. So there are aspects of anxiety that is positive because it motivates us to do things. But then there's also negative things about anxiety that can kind of affect us in negative ways, and that includes making us feel, nervous, or sometimes some of the physical symptoms can be like we breathe too fast, we feel dizzy, we might have headaches, and sometimes even our palms can get sweaty. So those are some of the physical signs that we are dealing with anxiety.
Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I think I would just add, I agree with everyone. And I think what I would just add is that when anxiety, like Dr. Casiano said, it is very normal. It can really help in circumstances. When it does become a little bit problematic is when those alarms that our body gives us is too loud, when it should really only be a little warning. And that's when we know that we need to maybe talk with an adult or get some help.
Thank you for sharing those answers. Let's talk about another emotion, depression. The dictionary says that depression is a deep sadness over a long period of time. Can each of you tell us what depression feels like? For example, what are physical cues from your body that might mean you're expecting depression? Dr. Casiano, share your thoughts.
Sure. So also depression can be defined as, feeling sad or not feeling very motivated for more than 14 days in a row. So depression can make people feel like not wanting to get out of bed or not doing the things that they usually like to do. And because of that, there are these physical symptoms that come with that, which can be, feeling very tired, sleepy, maybe even having difficulty falling asleep can be also a physical symptom of depression. And sometimes our appetite is changed. For some people, they might eat too much. For some others, they might not eat enough. And then there could also even be physical pains and even stomach pains and things that your body can react to because of depression.
Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I would agree with what Dr. Casiano said. I think the other piece that depression also sometimes does to us is it makes our minds tell us hurtful things. So, for example, if maybe you accidentally bumped into somebody, right? It could be an accident, but sometimes depression makes our mind tell us, oh, I'm such a bad person, right? And that's not necessarily us, that's that depression talking. So, that could also be a symptom.
Dr. Ayr-Volta?
I agree with everyone, and I just want to add one more symptom that may affect some of our students that are watching, in that sometimes when you are feeling symptoms of depression, it's hard to focus or concentrate, and that really can impact how you're doing in school every day. And the other piece too, as we've been talking about all these symptoms, is that often one of the keys is that because of these symptoms, we're just not enjoying the things that we normally enjoy. So a student might say, I love to play baseball, but now when I play baseball, it's just not as fun as it used to be. Or I love to spend time with my friends or play with my dogs, and it just doesn't feel as fun as it used to.
Thank you for helping us have a better understanding of anxiety and depression. My next question is, how common is it for someone to experience feelings of anxiety and/or depression? Dr. Bozak, what do you think?
So, as we've been saying, these feelings can be very normal. And I think the difference is we're all going to experience sadness or anxious feelings throughout many different times in our life, right? The difference is how often it happens and how much that it's disruptive to our lives. And that difference is where we need to make sure that we're asking for help, talking to adults, and doing something to get ourselves back on track.
Dr. Ayr-Volta?
The other piece to that was a great explanation by Dr. Bozak. And what happens when we're having these symptoms for a long time, or these feelings for a long time, is it starts to affect all different parts of our lives, right? So we might not be doing as well at school as we used to. It might impact our friendships or our relationships with our parents and family members. And those are important pieces to focus on when we're thinking about these symptoms.
Dr. Casiano?
I just want to highlight that anxiety is very common. The CDC also found that 9% of children, that's about 5.8 million children in the United States, are diagnosed with anxiety. So that's just to kind of let everyone know, right? All the students that are watching, that this is common and that you're not the only one that can be struggling with anxiety, but there's so many resources and people that are willing to help.
That is very helpful. Thank you. Next, can you tell us if anxiety and depression are long-term or short-term feelings? Dr. Ayr-Volta?
I think we've been highlighting this today already in some of our answers, that we all feel worried sometimes or sad sometimes, and that can be short term, right? I feel anxious before I take a test, or I have an argument with a friend and I feel sad. What we think about when we need to get some treatment is when those feelings do last more long term. If they are there every day for days and days and weeks, or if during the day you're feeling sad or feeling anxious for a long time. So I think, we all have those fluctuations, those changes in our emotions on the short term. And it's that when those emotions are there in the long term, that's when you need to think about getting help.
Dr. Casiano?
Yeah, short and long-term anxiety can feel like being afraid from being away from your parents for a very long time, or maybe experiencing something that you haven't experienced, like going on a roller coaster. If you've never done that before, you might feel a little anxiety about that. And those are kind of short-term ways that we feel it. But there can also be long-term kind of feelings of anxiety, of like worrying about the future and worrying about things that are coming up but that are not around the corner. Those kind of things can feel like short and long-term experiences of anxiety, but also it can also be the same way for depression.
Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think they've given great answers. I think one thing to remember is that when those feelings of anxiety and depression are short term, they might feel much more manageable, like it's going to end, right? But when they're longer term, it can feel sometimes overwhelming. And that can be the real difference between those short term and long term feelings.
Know more about mental health, anxiety, and depression. I'd like to ask you about what we can do as kids if we are experiencing these feelings, depending on whether we are in school, at home, or somewhere else. We might need a lot to use in different ways to cope with those feelings. A lot of us go to school. What strategies should kids try if we are in class and can't get up to take a break? Dr. Casiano, what are your thoughts?
First, I think that your teachers, it's a good, or letting someone know that you're feeling anxious is really important, right? Many times teachers are the best at finding a way to try to help their students. So when you're in school or you're in class and you're feeling anxious, having that opportunity to let your teacher, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I'm pretty sure your teachers are gonna try to do their best to be able to figure out the best way to help you. But also, what students can do if they're in class is, looking at ways to try to breathe. And I always say that breathing exercises are good, where you can just sitting in your desk, you could just breathe very deep and just kind of hold it in until your belly can't hold it anymore, and then just let it out. And practicing that a couple times while you're doing that, sitting in your desk, or maybe counting to 10 very slowly, and then once you get to 10, count backwards and do that at your desk. um, or what I like to do is having something that you can hold in your hand or something that you can touch. Usually, like, I carry a marble in my pants, so if I'm in a meeting and the meeting is really really affecting me in some way where I might be a little anxious, I just take the marble and I just keep it in my hand and I play with that in my hand. So having something in your hand that you can either touch or just kind of fidget with helps with dealing with anxiety right at your desk in school.
Thank you. Dr. Bozak?
Those were great answers. And I want to highlight too that what works for one person may not work for you. So it's also important to figure out what works for you as an individual. We're all different. And so one of those strategies may work really, really good for somebody, but not so well for you. And it's important to try different things. I also like to tell kids to think about the 5 senses. So our sense of sight, our smell, our taste, and our touch, right? So think one of these, focusing on it to sort of help kind of bring you back down when you're feeling really heightened and anxious or having those big emotions.
Dr. Ayr-Volta?
These are all great suggestions. I like Dr. Bozak. I was thinking about that students can look around their classroom and look at 5 things that they can see and 4 things that they can hear and 3 things that they can touch, sort of incorporating that counting. And here at the hospital, we talk about breathing as a great strategy because you can do it anywhere at any time, right? We're all breathing all day long anyways. And one of my favorites is called belly breathing. And that's where we can put our hands on our belly. And as we take that nice deep breath in through our nose, you can feel that belly expanding. And then as you slowly blow out, you feel your belly going back down. And it really can help you focus on your breathing and center your body for a minute in your class.
Thank you for sharing. Can I tell you about another idea I help kids if they're in class? So I warm my hands up like this until they're like really warm. And then I cup them around my ears and it sounds like the beach. And for me personally, I love the beach. And so when I feel like I can't be there, I just do that and it makes me feel so much more relaxed.
That's awesome.
When I ran for kid governor, I came up with an idea that would help kids who are experiencing these big feelings at school. As you know, we as kids have a hard time knowing what to do about our feelings, especially at school. Anxiety doesn't have a schedule. It can happen anytime during the day. I myself used to feel anxious a lot during school hours and wished I had a strategy to make myself feel better. To solve this problem, I came up with the tap out light station. If kids are experiencing big feelings during class, they can go to the station to take a break. It is called tap out light station because you can tap the light to change its color. Here's how it works. If a kid decides they need to reset, he or she would excuse themselves and walk over to the tap out light station. The student would sit down and tap the light to the color red, indicating that they need a moment right now. The teachers can put the light somewhere visible in their classroom with a comfy seat and relaxing activities. Those activities can include drawing, reading, using sensory toys, or anything else students would benefit from. Music can also be helpful. Consider adding a pair of headphones in an old-fashioned iPod or MP3 player with pre-programmed Zen music. I also recommend using a 3-minute sand timer so the kids can know when their break is done. When a student is using the tap out light station, they can use the activities to take a break and reset. The timer will make sure that nobody takes too long of a break. After the timer is up, the student will tap the light and change the color green, indicating that they have reset and can go back to what they were doing. My school, Monroe Elementary School, piloted the tap out light station in 7 classrooms. Here's what I did to make that happen. I wrote a letter to our PTO asking if they could donate money for this great cause. They said absolutely and gave me the money I needed to purchase the materials. And once everything came in, I worked with my teacher to get them and set up in the classrooms that requested them. If anyone is watching in the audience is interested in having a tap out light station in your classroom, you can try writing to your school's PTO. Do you think that strategy can be helpful for kids in Connecticut?
Yeah, I think, Ellie, that's a great idea and great strategy, right? Because it gives an opportunity to students to be able to, like you said, reset and be able to take a break and be able to then go back to their desk and be ready to learn everything that the teacher wants to share with them.
And I often, when I'm working with patients, we talk about building a coping toolkit. And this is like you're taking those coping toolkits and putting them right in the classroom. And I love that there's a variety of things, because what works one day to help you calm down or feel less sad or feel less anxious may not work the next day. So there's a variety of things in there to try each time you need a break.
Absolutely. And I agree with what everyone said. It's such a creative idea, and it incorporates a lot of the things that we've already talked about, right? Having different options, using your senses. So I really think this is a great idea.
Thank you. I hope lots of teachers and students put a tap out light station in their classrooms. Next, what strategies should kids try if we're in a more open environment at school, like recess, or in the cafeteria? Dr. Bozak, can you share your thoughts?
Absolutely. So I think, like we've been saying, it's really important to find what works for you. And it's also important to find a trusted adult to kind of walk you through what's going to happen when you're in the class. That could be an aide, it could be a teacher, it could be somebody else that's in the school, right? And so finding them and talking to them is really going to be key, as well as maybe figuring out what's in that situation that's overwhelming for you. If it's the space, right? If it's the open space that's overwhelming, maybe it's finding a spot that you feel safe in. Maybe it's going for a walk, or it could just be talking with that trusted adult.
Thank you. Dr. Ayr-Volta?
We talked about the strategies in the classroom, and you can always use all of those same strategies in any space at school. I think that when we think about recess and lunch, the nice thing is you usually have some peers around. And maybe that's a time you can use a friend or a peer to talk to or to engage in an activity to help you feel better.
Thank you. Dr. Casiano?
Well, first, I want to say that I love recess, and I think that schools should make sure that recess is an important part of the day for all students. So, but if you're outside, I think the strategies that can best fit you is something that you should look into. But finding a friend just to walk around with or to run with, and playing on the monkey bars, or swinging on the swings, all these things are really good to get your body moving. Or if you like to just be able to sit on the grass and just kind of put your hands on the grass and feel the grass, that is also an awesome way to kind of help kind of reset yourself, and try to be ready to go back into the classroom. So finding a place outside also to maybe even sit, and just be still and close your eyes and let the sun, if it's sunny, and let the sun hit you in the face, and just take like 5 minutes just to breathe in and out. And then those are great strategies to use when you're outdoors. But I love recess.
Great. Those are really helpful ideas. My next question is, what strategies should kids try if we are in a more private setting, like home? Dr. Ayr-Volta, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mentioned before we talk about coping toolkits, and you can even have a box of favorite activities like the ones you mentioned in school at home. Have that out somewhere that you can see it and it's easily accessible when you're starting to feel anxious or sad. I think you can talk to your parents if you're home, or whomever your caregivers are that you're living with. And the other nice thing when you're home is that you can maybe take some private space to listen to some favorite music or watch a favorite show, or look out the window or take a walk in your neighborhood.
Dr. Casiano?
If you have a pet like a dog or a cat, to be able to just sit with your dog or your cat inside your house and just pet them, or even play with them. If you have a dog throwing something where they can fetch, or making, having something that your cat can go kind of chase, and just having that time spent with your pet is a good way to manage anxiety and depression inside your house. But I also understand and have read and researched that what the brain likes is these repetitive, consistent kind of activities. So even sitting and drawing or coloring, or just something that includes some like art, in your room or in your house is also a great way to kind of manage anxiety and depression if you're inside the house.
Thank you. Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I love all of those ideas, and similar to what Dr. Ayr-Volta was talking about, I love the idea of creating a kit, right? So using a shoebox that you might have and putting all of these things in there so that it's readily accessible to you and you have it ready when you are feeling like you need it. So putting in some paper and colored pencils or markers in there so that you can draw, or putting in puzzles or something that you know that's going to help you. It might be music that you know that calms you down. All of that stuff that's readily accessible so you don't have to think about it when you are already feeling anxious is going to be a great way to help you when you're at home.
Thank you. Now, what if we are in a public place, like at the store, at a restaurant, or at practice? What strategies could kids try? Dr. Casiano, what do you think?
I think a good strategy if you're outdoors in public, in a restaurant, something like that, is to be able to, if you're waiting to sit down and there's a long wait, like if you go to a restaurant and there's like a 30-minute wait and you're like, oh my God, I want to do something and in order to pass this time, grabbing the menu and looking at the menu and trying to figure out all the things that are available to eat and then thinking about what would you like to eat is a good way. But what I like to do when I go to restaurants or I'm in a public place is to look around and look at the decorations and the art that's on the wall and picking out the top 3 things that I like, the top 3 decorations, the top 3 artwork that is displayed, and really focusing on that and looking at the colors and being able to, maybe if they have a little description underneath, reading what it's all about. So those are really good ways. And then if you're sitting and you finally have your food in front of you, having the opportunity to eat your food and being able to figure out what are the ingredients that were used to make this awesome bacon cheeseburger.
Thank you. Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I love that idea. And I also want to say, Dr. Casiano had mentioned that marble in his pocket before, right? That's another thing that you can do when you're out in public. You can have something to fidget with. And it can be something small like a marble. It could be like a stress ball or a koozie that you can kind of squeeze. Those are all really good skills to have and have with you that you can kind of use to cope with whatever feelings that you're feeling.
Thank you. Dr. Ayr-Volta?
So we've been talking today about coping strategies and incorporating our senses, and you can use the game I Spy and do it with things you see, but you can also do it with things you hear or things you smell or things you can feel. And so it's a way to really connect you to your environment and ground you while at the same time learning about the space you're in.
Great ideas. I hope everyone watching remembers these strategies and picks what best is for them. We've been talking about what kids can do if we are experiencing anxiety, depression, or other big feelings ourselves. But what if we notice that a friend or a classmate is struggling with these big feelings? What are things we can do to be supportive? Dr. Bozak, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think being a support to a friend by offering to listen to them is really helpful. Offering to help them whatever way is going to work for them. So maybe offering them the different things that might have worked for you and doing it with them, offering to go get an adult that they can talk with. Those are all options that you can encourage your friend so that they can help themselves.
Dr. Ayr-Volta?
I agree with Dr. Bozak. And I think if you're feeling worried about a friend, I think it's great to look to an adult that you trust, to talk to your teacher or go talk to the guidance counselor or school counselor about what you're concerned about. And then you can use that adult to help you come up with other ideas of how you can support that friend.
Thank you. Dr. Casiano?
I think that the best that we can do is if you see a friend that's maybe anxious or depressed or sad, is to let them know that you're there. Let them know that you are with them and to be able to maybe even stand close to them, ask them if there's something that they may need. Sometimes just listening to your friend is the best thing you can do with them and for them. We don't necessarily have to have this big drawn out speech or anything like that. Just being with someone is so comforting, and it lets them know that they're not alone, right? So let them know that you enjoy being their friend. And if you're worried and concerned, you should definitely, like my colleagues have said, reach out to an adult and share that you're concerned about your friend.
I'd like to ask one final question. Part of my platform is to collect uplifting messages to inspire kids. So I want to ask you, what is an inspiration or uplifting message that you'd like to share for the kids watching today? Dr. Ayr-Volta, what do you think?
Well, since today we've been talking a lot about mental health and our emotions, I like to remember that emotions are totally normal. We all have them, and there's lots of things that we have control over that we can do to help ourselves.
Thank you. Dr. Casiano?
Well, I like this quote that Helen Keller, who was the first deaf and blind person to graduate with her bachelor's degree, and it was an author, an American author, and she also lived in Westport, Connecticut. But one thing that she said that I think is really important because it carries a great message is she says, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." So what you're doing, Ellie, today with this platform, sharing tips and strategies with all the students in Connecticut, it's a great way to let other students know that again, there are ways that they can manage and cope with anxiety and depression, but that they're not alone. That they can reach out to their friend, to a trusted adult, a teacher, and that there are so many people willing to help so they don't have to do it alone.
Thank you. Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I think, we have all gotten through 100% of our hardest days. And so if we keep going and we keep learning what works for us, then we'll keep doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Bozak, Dr. Ayr-Volta, and Dr. Casiano. Do you have any final thoughts or comments for Connecticut students? Dr. Casiano, can you share your final thoughts?
I think that all students should recognize that you all have gifts and talents. And sometimes our emotions can block or maybe even try to confuse us into understanding that. But you all have gifts and talents. And I think that what's really inspiring is to be able to see all the different ways that you can achieve your individual goals. And that's going to make not only your family proud, but your school community proud, and it's just going to make society even that much better. So, I encourage you to always, always, always keep in mind and understand that if you use your gifts and your talents, we all benefit from that.
Dr. Bozak?
Yeah, I love what Dr. Casiano just said. I think, to echo some of that, we all bring our uniqueness to the table, right? And I think that's what makes this very beautiful. And I love what you're doing, Ellie, about talking about mental health to make sure that we all understand that feelings are normal. We all have different feelings. And so it's important to talk about that. And if we are feeling overwhelmed by some of these feelings, to make sure that we're able to get help and that we're able to, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves the same way that we emphasize our physical wellness as well.
Thank you. Dr. Ayr-Volta?
I agree with my colleagues, and I think, Ellie, this is fabulous that this is your platform. I love that we're talking about it. I love that we're saying we're normalizing this. I think kids are the agents of change, and the more that you guys are talking about feelings and talking about ways to cope and supports to get if you need it, the more everybody will be open to that. So I applaud your work, and I hope we keep going with all of this.
Thank you. And I feel like the kids today are the future of tomorrow because really, if you think about it, what will we be like when we are older? We will probably become really successful and have a great life if it's mostly mentally. This is a great way to wrap up today's educational program. Students, please join me in a round of applause to thank Dr. Bozak from the Department of Children and Families, Dr. Ayr-Volta from Connecticut Children, and Dr. Casiano from the University of Hartford for speaking with us today. I also want to thank you, all the students, teachers, and community members who participated in this educational program. I appreciate all the participating in helping me complete the first point of my platform. I hope you learned something new today and have ideas for how you can cope with these big feelings or maybe help someone else with their mental health. Before we go, I want to talk to you about another one of my platform points. For my third point, I'm creating a digital mental health hub with uplifting messages and interactive resources to inspire kids. One way I want to collect inspiring message is with your help. I am excited to announce that my poster contest, which starts today, I am inviting Connecticut 5th graders to submit artwork that answers the question, what is an uplifting or inspiring message for kids struggling with anxiety or depression? I am working with the Department of Children and Families and CT Family Day on this statewide poster contest. If you're the winner, your poster will be shared in schools and facilities all around the state and will also be featured on my digital mental health hub. If you're a 5th grade student or teacher, you can find the rules for the poster contest at ct.kidgovernor.org. Submissions are due by Friday, May 5. I hope you will participate. I'm so happy to be serving as your 2023 Kid Governor, and I look forward to working with all of you this year. Together, we can make a big difference in our state this year. Together, mental health. Visit ct.kidgovernor.org to learn more about my platform, my term, and the members of my cabinet. If you're not in 5th grade yet, make sure your school knows about the Kid Governor program so you can vote and maybe even run for office when you're in 5th grade. Thank you for watching today's program and for supporting my platform. I will now pass the program back to Ms. Piccizello.
One more time. I want to give Ellie another big round of applause and congratulate her on a great educational program. And students and teachers, I also hope that you learned something new and that you'll support Ellie's platform in your own community. As we close, I would like to thank Ellie for her hard work on her platform in this virtual program. And I'd also like to give another big thank you to Dr. Bozak from the Department of Children and Families, Dr. Ayr-Volta from Connecticut Children, and Dr. Casiano from the University of Hartford for partnering with Kid Governor Ellie and the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House on today's program. Remember to visit ct.kidgovernor.org to learn more about Ellie, her platform, her cabinet, and the Kid Governor program. Thank you for tuning in for today's program. Have a great rest of your day.